Okay, remember that they're changing my voice. So, according to the National Park Service, in 1607, 104 English men and boys arrived in Jamestown. Okay? Now, some of you might say, so what? Well, this has everything to do with why conservatives are wrong. I've never in my life come across anybody who was in the same culture as English men and boys in Jamestown in 1607 ever. You've got to realize there's a thin line between Christianity and Islam. As the story goes, they're 80% the same. They're 80% the same. Modern white culture, modern American culture, what have you, and the culture in Jamestown are probably like 20% the same, so to speak. So how are you going to say that you have a certain heritage and certain values, and they're very important to you, and therefore you've decided to be xenophobic? You wouldn't use those words, right? But that's what you've decided. And that you've decided you want to take a clan approach to going after foreigners, and liberals for that matter, but we'll get to that later. That is retarded. When's the last time you've seen a conservative in a carriage or, riding a horse? It's few and far between, right, in terms of riding a horse to town. How many cities in America have a ban on automobiles? There's probably a few somewhere somehow, but there's not many. If it's so important to you to conserve your culture, why do you have an iPhone? Why are you on the internet? Why do you watch TV? Why do you use the modern amenities? How many conservatives plan to not participate in the robot revolution, if you will? How many of you plan to boycott businesses that use robots? But yet your argument, and it's astounding to me, it is unbelievable. Your argument is that because people are different when they come here, to a country where there's all kinds of different people here, all kinds. I'm not even going to bother to start listing them. There's so many of them. Your argument is that's a problem. Before 9/11, when you would see a Somalian or someone wearing a hijab, no one would say anything. No one would care. It was just normal. After 9/11, they start, showing how much they hate Muslims and so on and so forth. And everyone knew at the time that they were going to start with them and they were going to work their way to other people they don't like. And it was the same old, like the rich, whites, Jews, LGBT people. Okay, it became more obvious the LGBT role later on. That they were going to turn the poor white people against the people of color and kind of force their psychotic law on society. That was their agenda. It was clear, right? It was Republicans who, got us into Afghanistan and Iraq. There was the shock and awe, the promises that they will find weapons of mass destruction and save the day, and so on and so forth. It was those conservative liars, none of them riding a horse. So when it comes to my region argument, everyone ignores it. Lots of people are aware of it by now, but everyone ignores it. Very, very silly. It goes like this, right? Just like Puerto Ricans, right? They don't vote in our, Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico, mind you. They don't vote in our general elections, right? They're not trying to win over Puerto Rico. We could have a region here or regions where immigrants go and they don't get the right to vote till we can figure out exactly what it means to have millions of immigrants come here every year and to have children and to change the demographics and to vote, because it's a pretty complex issue. I personally don't have a problem with it. I know some people do. America is a nation that's supposed to be for white supremacists. I see it as a nation that's changed a whole lot over the years. There was the 60s. The 70s was kind of weak, but the 80s was, we saw drastic change in the 80s. In the 90s, my goodness, we see change. Look how popular gangster rap became. It just exploded. We saw a lot of change. And not just in the ghettos or the poor areas. We saw lots of change in the white communities. A lot of them started listening to rap. We saw the vehicles change, the TVs change. We saw people starting to use computers and iPhones. The culture changed a lot, and it drastically changed the way people interact with each other. And we saw people changing the way they date, etc. It's pretty straightforward. When conservatives talk about gun cultures, how many of them are using muskets? How many conservatives make a point of using muskets? The guns changed. And the culture changed as a result. We saw the shape of people change. We saw people change drastically in various ways. Because America is a changing nation. People don't ride horses anymore. They ride cars. People have changed. How moral is the change? And when we're talking about crime, you got to love when they bring up crime. My goodness. You know, all these conservatives who historically bring the drugs to America, who historically collaborate with drug dealers, Iran, Contra, Oliver North, historically, this is who they are. They're a bunch of drug dealers. A lot of them, as they say. They try to cite that. During this Epstein crisis, they try to cite that. Where the people, the women who were abused by Epstein, they're not afraid of immigrants. They're afraid of the American government. They're not afraid of what the cartels would do to them. They're afraid of what the American government will do to them. You don't lift a finger to address corporate crime unless it's Democrats. And I'm not a Democrat or Republican, mind you. But you're all up in arms about changing demographics. It's a very heartless approach you people have. It's not Christian. You don't keep the golden rule. Immigrants, commit crimes at lower rates than the citizens here. And the crimes they commit are, peanuts compared to, say, supporting the genocide in Gaza. And if you don't think it's a genocide, a lot of people are being killed and they're not getting a lot from it. They're creating a lot more enemies, by doing it than they had before. A lot more hatred. Just today in the news, I saw there was a terrorist attack in Israel. An attack that wouldn't have happened if they had agreed to Hamas's ceasefire and had withdrawn from Gaza. And they would have got all the hostages back. A lot of those guys would still be alive. A lot of these soldiers who were killed since then wouldn't have been killed. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Their policies massacre people with starvation, hunger-related issues. 9 million people a year. 3 million of them are children. So they're mass murderers. Their policy causes so many rapes as they keep underdeveloped nations down. They keep their police forces down. They keep their technologies down so people get away with crimes and are more empowered to commit crimes. They cause these wars in foreign countries. If they make peace with a few they make peace. It's like a scheduled peace or something anyway. They pat themselves on the back. It's a sick joke. They're so in touch with their heritage. How come so many of them are so ignorant when it comes to history? They're just intolerant of other races. They want to treat it like slave masters and people, slave traders. When they used to come here to this country, the people used to come here, right? These people who were enslaved in the transatlantic slave trade, they'd come and they'd sell them as quick as they could. And they wanted to control them like Nazi guards in a concentration camp. They say, you go there, you go there. They say, hey, where's he doing? He's supposed to stop right there. And they start acting like control freaks. Power corrupts. It corrupts those who are not morally upright like I am. Look how I've used my power. I've said I'm the top martial artist. I've proven it with my top martial arts challenge. And how I've used my position is very admirable, if I may say so myself, and I should, because no one else is saying it. Because America is so xenophobic, even though I was born here, apparently a mulatto person in California is not American enough, even though California is the most populated state, even though Hollywood is in California, San Francisco is in California, Los Angeles is in California. Apparently I'm not American enough. It's very sad that you people have taken the positions that you have and that everyone's playing stupid. Now let me just touch on one thing. I want to make this a shorter video. Let me touch on one last thing here. People are scared to tell the truth. Unless you're in a compartment, right? You're a certain type of Democrat and you speak on certain issues a certain way and you accept the boundaries of the beast, so to speak, the boundaries of the state, then people know that they'll be punished for speaking about these things. They'll be blacklisted. All of a sudden the community treats them with a certain contempt. All of a sudden, they get fired or they have trouble getting a job. It's very sad that you people have resorted to these very authoritarian tactics. things that President Obama, for example, pointed out shouldn't be happening in America. You shouldn't have to worry about the government getting on your case for simply telling the truth about a humanitarian issue, about a very important social issue. The core cultural value of America is supposed to be freedom. People should be very ashamed of themselves when by their actions they're saying otherwise. What they're doing is something that's similar to what conspiracy theorists we used to say was hidden in plain view. Right? It is in plain view and it isn't. It's confused in plain view. Because on the one hand, you could technically sue the government for this, sue your employer, sue the county, sue this, sue that. But people don't. And for the most part, they won't because they're afraid of retribution. So there's kind of a sort of double think going on. You technically have the freedoms, and they're not supposed to persecute you. They're supposed to be for freedom. They're not supposed to support the government cracking down on political dissent. Political dissent and political dissidents. But they don't. When they say America, they're supposed to be on the side of free speech. Both parties are not on the side of free speech. Cancel culture is in both parties. And they're working together to make sure things go a certain way. There's corporations and social clubs and various groups and organizations and entities that work with both parties to make sure things go a certain way. And it's straightforward. For example, I'll leave you with this thought here. They wouldn't have brought the drugs to America if they thought that one party was actually doing their job. Because they have people everywhere. They have people in the CIA and the FBI. They have people in the NSA and Homeland Security and the Department of Defense. They have people in the DEA. They have people everywhere. If they thought that one of these parties was doing their job, they would not be bringing drugs into this country.